All right, so let's look at the actual numbers. What is the state of the photography market in 2020? How does the year look like so far? Well, we have a pandemic, so things look pretty grim. Lower sales figures all around for just about every manufacturer. Of course, it's not all due to the pandemic. This is the one chart to rule them all. This is the digital camera shipments data from SIPA, Japan. The amount of total digital cameras, that includes DSLRs, mirrorless, compact cameras, everything, shipped from Japan. We can see that it peaked around 2010. Remember that blue chart, the millions of cameras? Well, you can see it here overlaid along with smartphone data. So you can see around 2007, smartphone sales overtook digital camera sales, and now they make them look like almost nothing. Let's break it down by fixed lens versus interchangeable lens cameras. So ILC includes DSLR and mirrorless. And we can see interchangeable lens cameras were never really a giant proportion. It was around 2012. That was probably the peak heyday of the DSLRs, when there was actually a sizable chunk of them being sold. But it was always all about compact cameras. So DSLR and mirrorless, we can see DSLRs were definitely the majority of interchangeable lens cameras in 2012, but now it looks like it's almost even. By 2019, mirrorless and DSLRs are neck and neck, and fully expect mirrorless to take over in the coming years. Here we have interchangeable lens camera shipments by region, in case you're curious about the trends for Japan, Europe, the Americas, rest of Asia, that is Asia excluding Japan, and others. Average unit price. Digital cameras used to be an expensive luxury when they first came out, but then they started getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper with more volume, more competition between the camera manufacturers. 2011 was the bottom. Cameras on average were the cheapest, probably brought down by the massive amount of compact cameras available at the time. And now cameras prices are heading back upwards. With fewer sales, camera manufacturers have to sell you cameras at a higher unit cost if they want to stay profitable. Here we can compare the unit price of the different camera classes: fixed lens cameras, DSLRs, and mirrorless. So we can see that mirrorless cameras are quickly gaining in price. I mean, these are the money makers these days for the camera brands. So they're coming out, we can see it, all sorts of $3,000, $4,000 mirrorless cameras coming out. So obviously the average price is trending up. Let's look back at 2019 to see the shipments by region. Here we can see the fixed lenses are still selling pretty strong in Europe. That's the largest market for them. Europe and the Americas are still holding on to DSLRs, but DSLR sales are very low in China and Japan. Asia has largely switched over, and we can see there's more mirrorless sold in Japan and China than DSLRs. Very interesting that Japan by itself almost has as many fixed lens compact camera sales as the Americas combined. So here we have, again, a breakdown of fixed lenses, DSLR, and mirrorless. We can see that China is pretty much keeping the hope alive. On average, they're paying more for compact cameras, they're paying more for DSLRs, and they're paying quite a lot for mirrorless, only exceeded by other areas, which I guess Australians are dishing out a considerable amount of money for mirrorless cameras. I mean, even looking at DSLR prices, in China, on average, they're paying almost double the price for a DSLR as opposed to Americas, and what looks like almost triple the price compared to Europe, which is probably the prices in Europe and the Americas are brought down by those bundled kit DSLR packages, like, for example, the Nikon D3500 or the Canon Rebels. Let's take a look at lenses. More APS-C lenses were sold in the mid-2000s, early 2010s, but now the trend is going back to normal, which is to say fewer and fewer people are even buying APS-C DSLRs, and as we know, people who buy APS-C DSLRs rarely buy too many lenses, but it's the full frame and medium format users that really had the numbers. Finally, let's take a look at prime lenses versus zoom lenses. In green, we see the APS-C zoom lenses. In yellow, we see the APS-C prime lenses. So look at that comparison. A vast majority of lenses sold for APS-C DSLRs or zoom lenses. Well, that's partly because the manufacturers don't even release that many prime lenses for APS-C DSLRs to begin with. The ratio is a lot more balanced for full frame users. We see much more of a balance between prime lenses and zoom lenses. Certainly zoom lenses are very popular for working professionals, and prime lenses get all the hype on the internet. Total camera value shipped, $5.4 billion of cameras were shipped last year. Now, this is down almost 20% from 2018, so the trend is downwards as we've seen. Now, what's the breakout of that? Fixed lenses, $1.2 billion worth. DSLRs, $1.6 billion. And mirrorless, $2.6 billion. You can see mirrorless is the only one in the green. It's actually growing a little bit. There's a glimmer of hope versus DSLRs. Look at that 40% drop. Lenses, 12% decline from 2018. Not as much of a decline as cameras, but still a decline. Here's a fun chart, guys. Usage by age group. Again, this is just the Japanese market, and I'll explain what's going on with the data. So on the left, we see the years starting from 2005. 2005, 15% of camera users were age 29 or younger, and 15% of camera users were age 60 or older, and it was a pretty even distribution. But now, let's go all the way down to 2019, and only 8% of camera users are 29 or younger, and 30% of camera users are 60 or older. So again, this is just Japan, but it may be indicative of the trend globally. Usage by gender, 85% of people using dedicated cameras in Japan are male and 15% are female. This is the mirrorless and DSLR market share in Japan. So if everything adds up to 100%, we have Sony that actually increased from 31 to 38% in terms of market share. Canon and Nikon both dropped. Nikon saw a larger relative drop, and it's now 24% of the Japanese full-frame ILC market. Another chart people went bonkers about. Again, guys, keep in mind this is from BCN and this is Japan only. Once again, 2018 versus 2019, total units sold. Right, we see Sony actually going up and Nikon and Canon are dropping. Finally, similar chart, but for total value of cameras sold. Sony going up a lot more in the APS-C. I guess a lot of people are buying the A6000 series. Here's a chart I might get crucified for. I came up with this little war for sensor sizes. So I'll explain what's going on this chart real quick. On the left, we have all the different popular sensor sizes that consumers shoot with these days. So medium format, full frame, APS-C, micro four thirds, 1 inch, and anything under 1 inch. I looked at a major photo online retailer in the US, and if the brand had a new camera available as of the filming of this video in that sensor size, I put it up there. So we can see who's competing for what sensor size. Now, the biggest shock to me was Leica. You never really think of Leica as anything more than the 35mm classic rangefinder, but they actually have cameras in every sensor size, all the way down to 1 inch. Sony competes in full frame, APS-C and 1 inch sensor sizes. Canon as well. Nikon has full frame lineup and the APS-C lineup, both DSLRs and mirrorless. Fuji has taken a two-pronged approach. They compete in medium format and APS-C. That's where they have placed their bets. Panasonic, full frame, micro four thirds, and 1 inch. So between Fuji and Panasonic, they kind of divvied up the market. Olympus is focused exclusively on micro four thirds. Now at the very bottom, we can see all the different companies involved with compact cameras. I don't know how this is going to play out, but there are a lot of players and the market is shrinking. So it's going to be a battle in the next few years. It's going to be quite interesting to watch things as they develop, no pun intended. Looking at Google Trends, we can see that the big three companies are actually Canon, Sony, and Nikon in that order, roughly in order of interest online. Now, of course, this isn't correlated with sales or anything. This is just Google Trend data showing you comparative volume of online searches. The next five companies are Panasonic, Olympus, Fuji, Leica, and Pentax. Panasonic on top, probably because of the popularity with video. Fuji and Olympus tied. Then we have Leica, which is, is never at the bottom, but it's never at the top either. And Pentax, the old school camera brand that still has this local followers that call themselves Pentaxians. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer of them. Specific brands. So first we'll take a look at Canon real quick. Synonymous with digital photography. It's making waves currently with the R5 and R6 mirrorless full-frame cameras that have just come out. There have been some reports of overheating, but I think it's too early to draw any conclusions. I think increasingly Canon, just like all the other major brands, are putting in more and more video features, which are really straining the camera's processors. Canon also has an APS-C line of mirrorless cameras in the EFM mount. For example, the M50 or the M6. These are often overlooked. People tend to disregard them for their limited lens selection, but you can adapt a whole bunch of other lenses on them and they enjoy big popularity in Canon's home market of Japan, especially the M50. It's one of the best-selling digital cameras at home in Japan. We don't know about the future of Canon's DSLR line. There are now rumors that there will be no more 5D cameras. A 5D, of course, was Canon's bread and butter. A lot of professionals, prosumers bought the 5D. The latest DSLR that Canon released was the big one, the 1DX Mark III. And there actually is another Rebel that recently came out, the T8i, although the announcement has been stifled by shipping delays due to the coronavirus. Looking at Sony, Sony is just Sony, it's in the news. They have a wide range, not only of the A7, but of the professional level A9 series of cameras, which are actually increasingly used by professional sports photographers. They have the very popular A6000 series of APS-C cameras that have become popular for travel and videography as well. So Sony, lots of different products, constant innovation, and a lot of options available for third-party lenses. We've got Tamron, Sigma, other manufacturers looking to cash in on Sony's popularity. Sony has recently announced a partnership with the Associated Press. So for at least, I think, the next 4 years, all AP photographers will be issued, or rather will be shooting with Sony bodies, likely the A9. So that's a pretty big win. I think a lot of professionals, especially press photographers, prefer mirrorless cameras because they're less distracting. They're much quieter to shoot, so they don't distract the subject as much. Looking at Nikon, Nikon kind of waited until the other players developed their mirrorless lines and have recently jumped in with the Z series of mirrorless cameras. We now have the Z6 and 7 that have been out for over a year. Z5 has just come out, just been announced. It's the more affordable entry level into the full frame Z system. And of course we have the Z50, which is their APS-C or crop sensor mirrorless camera. Now at the same time, Nikon has announced that they're still having more DSLR sales than mirrorless, so there's still a focus on DSLRs. The D6 was the latest and greatest large professional level camera. The D780 came out not too long ago as another iteration on top of the D750. The D780 is interesting because it's kind of a hybrid of a lot of DSLR features and mirrorless features. Nikon has a well-defined Z-mount lens roadmap for 2020 and beyond, and they're pretty much sticking to it. It's quite impressive. They're very transparent about the lenses that are coming out. Nikon also still continues to release compact cameras, Coolpix super zoom cameras like the P1000. Pentax and Ricoh are really one company, but they develop products under two different brand names. We have Pentax, its legacy tradition as a tough, rugged camera, continues to make DSLRs and has recently announced a renewed commitment DSLRs. There's a new K-mount APS-C DSLR coming out. People are nicknaming it the K-New. On the medium format side, Pentax has the 645Z medium format camera, very popular. And on the Ricoh side, the GR is now a officially cult favorite. It has been for some time. The latest one is the GR3, offering for the first time in-body image stabilization and a 24 megapixel sensor. Panasonic has made video its focus. An S1 line of full-frame cameras, top of the line stuff, has become very popular with videographers, but even before that, the G85, the G7 were extremely popular choices. The LX100 has been updated not too long ago, now offers a 17 megapixel sensor. The LX100 is Panasonic's premium compact. Let's talk about Olympus. The big news this year is the camera division of Olympus. All right, Olympus is not just digital cameras, but the camera division was recently sold to JIP, Japan Industrial Partners, which is a private equity fund that's famous for previously buying Sony's Vaio line of laptop computers. So we're going to see what ends up happening. I suspect that the Olympus name will no longer be used by GIP, but they might continue to roll out products that have already been developed, products that are in the pipeline under the OMD or Zuiko. It's too early to tell. The sale is not actually finalized until the end of the year, so we'll see what happens with that. We're still seeing cameras released that have already been developed by Olympus previously, and I think that was part of the transition as the GIP ensures kind of a smooth transition of assets by still committing to the product line, still honoring warranty. Finally, Fujifilm. Fuji, known for its retro good looks, has two main formats that they're going after: medium format and the APS-C line of SLR style and rangefinder style of interchangeable lens cameras. On the medium format side, Fuji famously released the GFX 100, a 100 megapixel beast of a mirrorless cameras. They also have the very popular 50S and 50R. Their XT3, XT4 cameras have become extremely popular online. They're a favorite because of their retro looks and very comfortable ergonomics with dedicated dowels for everything. Many people shoot Fuji for the various film profiles that are available natively on Fuji cameras. Leica continues to be strong. They have their niche. They don't sell too many cameras, but what they do sell is high quality, high cost, and they have a loyal fan base. So Leica, I think, will be one of the longest camera companies to survive just because they've never needed huge volumes to be successful. They've recently announced an M10R, which is a 40 megapixel version of their very famous popular M10 35mm digital rangefinder. They have a strong lineup and heritage of M-mount cameras and lenses. There's also third-party support from Zeiss and Voigtlander, among other companies. They also have medium format APS-C, micro four thirds, I think due to their partnership with Panasonic, and even 1-inch sensor compact. So as we've seen on the chart, Leica actually has their hands in many pies, so to say. Let's look at some trends, overall trends. These are fun to look at. Mirrorless cameras are going up. We see DSLRs on Google Trends, again, peaked around the late 2000s, early 2010s, and have been on a decline, much more pronounced and rapid decline recently, while mirrorless as a search term is going up. The rise of vlogging and YouTube, we can contrast this with the term for digital photography. So we can see fewer and fewer people are actually searching for digital photography itself, but vlogging and YouTube are hugely popular. Another trend is higher and higher increased interest in mobile photography. We can see the term has been steadily gaining and recently has become extremely popular, probably due to the extreme advances made in computational photography in the last couple years. Speaking of computational photography, it's really something that all photographers should understand. The sheer power of what you can do with a powerful CPU and advanced software processing in these modern smartphones. On a high-end smartphone, it takes a burst of frames, combines them in post-processing to get a sharper result, a result with more dynamic range, and ultimately a higher quality result, especially in low-light situations. So basically it comes down to averaging lots of digital information. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, and you can go quite deep into this rabbit hole of machine learning with image processing. But it's quite amazing what phones are doing these days, and many photographers are saying they're completely eating away at anything, even up to 1-inch sensor size at this point. If you always have the phone in your pocket, there's less and less incentive to bring a dedicated camera with you. Multiple camera units on phones, multiple lenses at different focal lengths. There's talk now of new lens technology that will allow for optical zooming. So something to look out for. Lots of developments in this space. Billions of dollars spent on research and development means that any kind of sensor improvements are going to happen first at smaller sensors before they cascade up to larger sensors. Another trend, if we compare the traffic for Flickr, DeviantArt, 500 Pixels, SmugMug, Zenfolio, these are all sites that traditionally were associated with digital photography. And there's no point overlaying the Instagram chart on this because it would absolutely dwarf everyone by a factor of 100. Now we're seeing more and more manufacturers making lenses for the various camera mounts. We have the older school third-party ones that everyone knows, like Sigma, Tamron, Tokina, Voigtlander, and Zeiss, but we also have a bunch of new players. Some more developments to talk about. Neewer and Godox continued disruption of lighting and the accessories market. So Godox, especially their 8200, X Pro 1 series of triggers, their various flash photography units. COVID-19 pandemic, as we mentioned, causes major disruptions to supply chains, affects shipping times, and also consumer purchasing behavior. Fewer conventions. Most of the large in-person conventions have been canceled. Now we're seeing more online product launches, and this is not just happening in the digital photography space, this is happening across the board. Recently, National Geographic shut down their Your Shot online portfolio sharing service and just moved the whole thing to Instagram, so it's kind of telling the way things are going. And interestingly enough, even smartphone sales are slowing down. Global smartphone sales declined almost 3% in 2019 Q1 according to Gartner. Some bold or not some bold predictions. Of course, massive decline of shipments in 2020 due to COVID-19. Over 50% drop from 2019 is expected. I believe cameras will eventually stabilize at around 8 million units globally. That includes compact and interchangeable lens cameras, so DSLR and mirrorless. The average price of cameras and lenses continues to rise as manufacturers struggle to stay profitable in a declining market. But at the same time, we're going to see lower and lower entry prices for full-frame cameras, because I think camera companies will try to suck you into their lens ecosystem with cheaper full-frame cameras, and we may even see a $500 full-frame camera by 2025 as mirrorless costs go down and the initial research and development costs are recouped. No major changes in the medium format market. It will continue to be used by professional studio photographers, landscape shooters. I believe no new DSLRs after 2024. I may be proven wrong, but I think after the 2024 Olympics, I think that will be Canon and Nikon's last foray into the pro sports line of DSLRs. Of course, maybe no DSLRs even after this year. We'll see. I mean, Pentax is still making them, so there you have it. Smartphones, as we mentioned, continue to chip away at the 1-inch and micro four thirds. I don't want to see any camera sensor sizes go away. I do really like the micro four thirds format for its balance of quality and size. Thanks guys for watching. I know this has been a really nerdy, boring video. Photography is about taking pictures, having fun, not about charts and graphs. But I really wanted to take a look at the camera market, and I got all this data for myself and just wanted to share it with you guys. Anyway, if you have any questions, let's have a civil discussion in the comments section. I'm not a professional analyst or anything like that. I'm just a guy who made some bar charts in Google Docs. If you have any bold predictions for the future, let us know in the comments section. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you later.